𝐕𝐢's studio was buzzing with energy that morning. The audience, eager for the day's guests, lapped rhythmically as cameras rolled and co-hosts settled into their usual banter. Joy Behar, sharp-tongued and unfiltered as always, glanced at her cue card and smirked. "Up next," she said, "we've got Mark Wahlberg joining us. You know, the action guy with the big mouth, even bigger muscles." Laughter rippled through the studio. But behind the curtains, Mark stood still, arms crossed, heard every word. Mark Wahlberg had been invited to promote a film and talk about his foundation for at-risk youth. But from the moment he arrived, he sensed a strange tone. The producers seemed rushed. The dressing room was cold and cramped. And now, Joy's comment. As he walked on stage, the applause picked up. Mark smiled professionally and sat between Whoopi and Joy. But Joy didn't wait long. "So, Mark," she said, leaning forward, "you're here to save the world one gym rep at a time?" The audience chuckled again, but Mark kept a steady gaze. "I'm here to talk about second chances," he said calmly, "especially for kids who never get one." Joy waved a hand dismissively. "Right, but let's talk about your second chances. I mean, your past isn't exactly squeaky clean, is it?" The air shifted. Whoopi and Sunny exchanged nervous glances. The audience hushed. Mark's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained level. "I've made mistakes. I've never hidden from them, but I've worked hard to become someone I can be proud of." Joy raised an eyebrow. "You think muscles and movie roles make up for that?" That was it. Mark leaned forward, his voice calm but razor sharp. "You want to talk about real change, Joy? I'll talk to kids in jail who've never had anyone believe in them. I fund programs to keep them off the streets. I've sat with parents who've lost their sons to violence, and I don't do it for cameras or applause." Joy crossed her arms. "Sounds like a PR move." Mark looked right at her. "Nobody's perfect. But what are you doing for the people you judge?" The audience gasped. A moment of silence fell. Even the camera crew paused. Joy smirked, trying to regain control. "I just think people with your history should be careful when preaching." Mark leaned back. "And maybe people with your platform should try listening more than talking." Whoopi's eyes widened. Sunny looked down at her notes. Even Ana Navarro let out a quiet wow. Joy laughed nervously. "Oh, come on. This is The View, not a confession booth." Mark stood up. "Exactly. So let's talk about what matters. Not your scripts, not your sarcasm, but real stories." He turned to the audience. "I came here to speak from the heart. But if this show doesn't have room for that, I'll take it elsewhere." And with that, he walked off set. The studio was frozen in disbelief. Mark Wahlberg's exit wasn't scripted, it wasn't expected, and it definitely wasn't forgotten. As the commercial break rolled in, the hosts sat stunned. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, rubbing her forehead. That was something. Joy tried to brush it off with a shrug. "I mean, if he can't take a little heat, maybe he's in the wrong industry." But the audience wasn't laughing. In fact, the murmur of whispers and scattered claps told a different story. Something had shifted. Backstage, Mark paced silently in the hallway. His publicist ran up, panicked. "Mark, should we try to smooth things over? Maybe go back on for the next segment?" He shook his head. "I came here to talk about kids who need hope. It's not to be a punchline." Meanwhile, the show resumed, but the energy was off. Social media lit up instantly. Clips of the clash were already going viral, but not in Joy's favor. One tweet read, "Mark Wahlberg came to talk about redemption." Joy Behar tried to tear him down. He walked out with class. Another. She tried to humiliate him on live TV, but he stood his ground and didn't stoop to her level. That's real strength. Producers quickly realized something had to be done. Moments after the show ended, the executive producer called Mark's team. They wanted a private conversation, not a PR stunt. A genuine conversation. Mark hesitated. Only if Joy's open to listening. "I'm not interested in a fake apology." 2 days later, a meeting was arranged. In a quiet conference room at the studio, Joy Behar walked in first. Gone was the smirk, the sharp tone. She looked tired, maybe even humbled. Mark entered minutes later, casual but focused. Joy stood up. "I wanted to talk to you face to face. No cameras, no audience." Mark nodded. "I appreciate that." She sighed. I've been in this business a long time. Sometimes I get caught up in playing the skeptic, the provocateur. But I realize now I crossed a line. Mark listened quietly. I didn't give you a chance to speak, she continued. And that's not what The View is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about hearing people. Mark finally spoke. You don't have to like me, but the work I do, with the kids, the families, the streets I came from, that's real. I'm not ashamed of my past, because I've fought to turn it into something good. Joy nodded slowly. I know, and I watched the clip again. Saw it in your eyes. You were being honest. She paused. I'm sorry I didn't respect that. Mark took a deep breath. Thank you. And then something surprising happened. Joy asked, Can I visit one of your programs off camera? Just to see? Mark smiled, the tension softening. Yeah, I'd like that. A week later, the unthinkable happened. Joy Behar, long known for her strong opinions and razor-sharp wit, stepped into a quiet youth center in South Boston, wearing jeans, a plain sweater, and no makeup. There were no cameras, no scripts, just the echo of basketballs bouncing in the gym and the quiet laughter of kids who had no idea who she really was. Mark Wahlberg greeted her at the door. You came, he said, a little surprised. I said I would, she replied, her voice softer than usual, and I meant it. He led her through the center, introducing her to young men and women who had once stood on the edge of darkness, gang violence, poverty, broken homes, and found light through purpose. Many were now in job training programs, mentoring younger teens, or taking college courses. One boy, about 16, shook Joy's hand and said, Mr. Wahlberg saved my life, not by giving me money, but by showing up. Joy's eyes glistened. Another young woman, barely 20, shared, I was homeless. Mark didn't just help me find shelter. He stayed in touch, called every week. He believed in me before I believed in myself. Mark stayed quiet as Joy took it all in. He wasn't there to lecture. He didn't need to. Later, they sat in a small cafeteria over coffee. I don't know what I expected, Joy finally said. But this wasn't it. What did you expect, Mark? Asked gently. She chuckled nervously. Maybe some PR stunt. A couple of kids with prepared speeches. I didn't expect all this love. Mark leaned back. It's real. That's the thing. It's not about celebrity. These kids don't care who I am in Hollywood. They care that I show up. Joy stirred her coffee. He said something on the show about second chances. About faith, he nodded. I think I get it now. Mark looked at her. We all need grace, joy, even you, even me. She smiled for once without sarcasm, maybe especially me. When she returned to New York, she asked for one more segment on The View. This time, the producers were wary. You're not planning another ambush, are you? No, she said quietly. I'm planning to listen. That Friday, with cameras rolling and the world watching, Joy opened the show differently. I want to take a moment to address what happened last week. My exchange with Mark Wahlberg wasn't my finest moment. I interrupted. I dismissed. I judged a man based on his past without listening to who he is today. The audience was dead silent. But then, she continued, I saw who he really is. I visited his youth center. I met the kids he's helped. No changed. And I realized something. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. She looked straight into the camera. To Mark Wahlberg and to anyone I've ever treated unfairly. I see you now. And I'm learning. Mark, watching from his living room, didn't smile out of triumph. He smiled out of respect. Redemption doesn't come easy. But when it does, when hearts open and egos step aside, it changes more than reputations. It changes lives. That clash on live television could have ended in silence or scandal, but instead, it sparked a deeper conversation. Reminder that no matter how loud the world gets, there's still room for grace, for humility, for kindness. And sometimes, the most powerful mic drop is a genuine apology. The end.